Amara Lin, Lin, and Lira Mahani stepped into Dubai's Golden Palace with hopes of a new life, but none of them knew that Sheikh Zaydan wedding night would uncover a secret so deadly that it would turn celebration into a black nightmare. Sheikh Zaydan Al-Rahif believed his life was finally settling into perfect order as he prepared for his grand marriage to Amara Lin Wei. The arrangement had been finalized with unusual speed. $3 million were transferred as dowry without negotiation, a sign of his confidence that this union would strengthen his family legacy. Zaydan was known for strict traditions and took immense pride in selecting a bride who matched the image he had built for himself. Amara's family in Malaysia had promised purity, loyalty, and a dignified upbringing. To Zaydan, she seemed like the final missing piece in his carefully controlled world. The preparations for the ceremony began weeks before Amara even arrived in Dubai. Workers decorated the palace with rare flowers flown from Europe, golden lanterns crafted by handmade artisans, and silk fabrics draped across every corridor. The wedding was treated as a national-level event, attracting businessmen, foreign royals, and media outlets eager to witness the story of a wealthy sheikh marrying a mysterious Malaysian bride. Inside the palace walls, the excitement was electric, but beneath it all, an odd sense of unease lingered, one that no one could explain. When Amara stepped out of the private jet arranged for her, she appeared calm and graceful, moving softly with quiet steps. Yet something about her eyes stood out. They held a restlessness, as though she was constantly waiting for something unexpected to happen. The palace staff welcomed her warmly, but they whispered among themselves about her distant expression. It was clear she carried a weight that no one else could see. Amara Lin Wei, her older brother, traveled with her and remained alert from the moment he entered the palace. His posture was stiff, his movements cautious, as if the shining walls and luxurious decor made him nervous rather than impressed. He stayed close to Amara, stepping between her and anyone who approached too quickly. Some guests assumed he was simply a protective sibling, but others sensed something more, of fear hidden beneath his quiet behavior. A childhood friend, Lira Mahani, also joined the wedding party. She arrived without the enthusiasm expected of a guest attending such a grand event. She refused to take pictures, avoided excited conversations, and kept her focus mostly on Amara. She carried a small brown pouch with her at all times, treating it with unusual care. Whenever someone asked about it, she simply changed the topic or walked away. As the wedding day approached, the palace filled with music, expensive perfumes, and the hum of constant movement. Zaydan spent his time greeting VIP guests, overseeing last-minute arrangements, and ensuring that everything matched his high standards. Yet even he noticed a strange tension in Amara's group. He watched them from a distance, curious but patient. He believed that time would allow their awkwardness to settle. On the wedding evening, the palace lit up like a dream. Fireworks burst across the sky, the dining tables shimmered with crystal decorations, and thousands of candles glowed in the hall. Amara walked down the aisle with a soft, controlled grace. Her dress sparkled under the lights, but her expression revealed nothing: no warmth, no excitement, only a calm mask, hiding something deeper. Farid watched her closely, while Lira stood behind with her pouch tucked tightly under her arm. The guests admired Amara's beauty and Zaydan's prideful smile, yet the contrast between the couple was striking. He appeared confident and satisfied. She seemed distant and lost in her thoughts. Some whispered that she looked more like a guest than a bride. Others assumed it was simply cultural shyness. No one imagined that her silence had nothing to do with shyness and everything to do with survival. As the final ceremony concluded and blessings were offered, the palace erupted into celebration. But Amara's heart remained heavy. Zaydan believed he had just secured the perfect marriage. What he didn't know was that the bride he brought into his palace was carrying a story far darker than he could ever imagine, and the truth, once exposed, would tear his world apart. Amara's new life inside the palace began with quiet routines and silent observations. The private wing prepared for her was filled with luxury hand-woven carpets from Persia, chandeliers the size of small cars, and walls polished with marbles so smooth they reflected like mirrors. Yet none of it brought comfort. She moved through the halls like someone afraid to leave footprints behind, careful with every step, every gesture, as if she worried that even the smallest mistake could trigger disaster. The palace staff treated her with respect, but she sensed their eyes studying her, searching for signs that something about her did not fit. During the first week, her nervous behaviors became more noticeable. She avoided closed rooms and insisted on keeping doors slightly open, even during routine activities. When the staff tried to escort her through the palace, she hesitated at staircases and dark corners, scanning them with suspicious eyes. She rarely spoke unless it was absolutely necessary. Instead of embracing her new position as a sheikh's wife, she lived as if waiting for someone or something to appear at any moment. Her brother made frequent visits under the pretense of checking on her well-being. Each time he entered the palace, his eyes moved quickly across the surroundings. He examined windows, corridors, and security cameras as though he expected danger to slip in through any gap. The guards noticed his careful movements but said nothing. They assumed he was merely overwhelmed by the palace's size and grandeur. In reality, Farid was terrified of the past catching up to them. He knew that bringing Amara to Dubai did not erase the shadows following them from Malaysia. In fact, it made them more vulnerable. Inside her room, Amara often sat in silence while Farid paced the floor with restless energy. He sometimes checked her belongings repeatedly, making sure everything was exactly where he placed it. His anxiety grew stronger with each passing day, especially as the wedding celebrations faded and life inside the palace settled into routine. Quiet moments were the ones that scared him the most, because silence always reminded him of the nights they spent hiding back home. Lira Mahani, Amara's childhood friend, stayed in a guest suite near the family quarters. Her presence at the palace was unexpected, yet she refused to return to Malaysia despite Zaydan's family hinting that her stay should be temporary. She kept her pouch with her at all times, gripping it tightly as if the small bag were a shield. The staff noticed how she avoided leaving her room at night and how she often locked her door, even when she was inside. Something about her made people uneasy, though no one could explain why. Amara's behavior became the subject of quiet conversations among the palace staff. They whispered about her sudden flinches when someone walked too closely, and her habit of waking up at odd hours to check the hallway. Some believed she had a painful past she was trying to escape. Others suspected she was simply overwhelmed by her new life. But one thing was certain: she was not like the other brides who had joined powerful families in Dubai. Her fear felt deeper, heavier, and more alive. Meanwhile, Sheikh Zaydan observed everything from a distance. He had hired people to manage his empire, but he relied heavily on instinct when it came to people. And something about Amara's behavior did not match the peaceful, pure identity her family had presented. Her discomfort suggested secrets that irritated him more with each passing day. He believed a wife should bring stability, not shadows. Quietly, without announcing it, he ordered a background investigation. He asked Colonel Tariq Saeed to gather information from Malaysia, especially anything related to Amara's sudden disappearance from her hometown years ago. He wanted clarity, and he wanted it fast. Back in the palace, Amara sensed a shift in the air. She noticed Zaydan's longer stares and the watchful eyes of guards positioned closer than before. Even the staff's tone changed, becoming more formal, more distant. Farid felt it too, and he warned her to be cautious. Lyra, tightening her grip on the pouch, insisted on staying close. The walls that once appeared golden now felt like a cage closing in. Amara realized that whatever they had been running from in Malaysia was no longer the only danger. Now the palace itself carried risks she could no longer ignore. Colonel Tariq Saeed began his investigation with the precision he was known for. He did not rely on assumptions or rumors. He relied on facts. As soon as Sheikh Zaydan gave his discreet order, Tariq contacted law enforcement agencies in Malaysia, searched archived reports, and reached out to officers who had worked in Amara's region years earlier. What he found initially seemed ordinary birth records, school certificates, and medical documents. But the deeper he went, the more gaps appeared. Certain files were incomplete, while others were missing entirely, like pages torn from a book. The timeline of Amara's life had strange interruptions that no official source could explain. Her disappearance stood out as the most suspicious element. Records showed that she vanished abruptly in her late teens, leaving her home one night without a trace. The police had opened an inquiry, but it went cold within days. What shocked Tariq more was that two men from her area, both with criminal backgrounds, had been found dead not long after she disappeared. Their deaths were marked as under investigation, but the cases had been dropped due to lack of evidence. The files were filled with vague statements, missing photographs, and witnesses who withdrew their testimonies. It was as if someone wanted the truth buried. Tariq expanded his search beyond official records. He spoke to Malaysian contacts who shared unfiltered information. They revealed that the two dead men were known troublemakers who often targeted vulnerable young women. They were suspected of being connected to illegal activities, including trafficking, though no charges had ever been filed. Rumors whispered through small towns suggested that Amara had been one of their victims. But every time someone tried to explain what happened, they hesitated, as if fear still controlled their tongues. Farid's name surfaced repeatedly as well. He had been seen around both crime scenes, always described as tense and protective. Some believed he was involved, while others claimed he was trying to rescue his sister. But because no one talked openly, the truth remained hidden under layers of silence. Lyra Mahani appeared next in the investigation. Her name was listed in community records as Amara's closest friend. Yet when Tariq dug into her past, he found a trail of sudden decisions, a quick move to another town, lack of employment history, and no public social records. It was unusual, almost as if she were erasing herself piece by piece. Tariq noted her suspicious behavior at the wedding as another sign that she held knowledge she didn't want to share. The colonel began to understand that the perfect bride story presented to Sheikh Zaydan was only a carefully constructed mask. Beneath it lay trauma, disappearance, and unresolved deaths. He prepared a full report and added every detail, even the ones that were cryptic or incomplete. He knew the Sheikh would want everything, no matter how unsettling. On the wedding night, Tariq arrived at the palace with the report sealed in a folder. He was escorted to Zaydan's private office, where the Sheikh waited with a controlled expression. Tariq handed him the folder without saying a word. As Zaydan read, the tension in the room thickened. His face shifted from confusion to disbelief, then to a dark, cold anger. The details felt like betrayal. He had paid $3 million for an illusion. The bride he brought into his home was not who she claimed to be. Meanwhile, in her private chamber, Amara felt an inexplicable heaviness. It was as though her past was walking toward her, step by step, ready to reveal everything she spent years trying to escape. Farid sensed it too. His pacing became frantic. Lyra tightened her grip on the small pouch, knowing that the truth inside it was both her weapon and her curse. The palace, once filled with music and celebration, now seemed like a stage awaiting the next act, a confrontation none of them could avoid. The truth Tariq uncovered had started a silent countdown. In the moment Zaydan closed the final page of the report, the countdown reached its first second. The wedding night would not end the way anyone imagined. It was only the beginning of a storm that had been waiting to break for years. The wedding night began with an uneasy quiet that spread through the palace halls. Servants whispered to one another, noticing the shift in the Sheikh's behavior after Colonel Tariq's visit. Zaydan moved with a controlled stiffness, his jaw clenched and his steps heavy against the marble floors. The report he had read burned in his mind, each page tearing down the image he had created of his new bride. Instead of purity and innocence, he now saw secrecy and deception. His pride, his reputation, and even his judgment felt insulted. The anger building inside him needed a place to go, and he chose Amara's chamber as the destination. Inside the room, Amara felt the tension before she heard any footsteps. Her skin prickled with unease, and her breaths came shallow, as though her body recognized danger before her mind did. She stood near the window while Farid stayed close to the door, trying to decipher every sound from the corridor. Lyra sat stiffly on a chair, her pouch resting on her lap like a final lifeline. None of them were speaking, but the silence between them felt louder than any conversation. Each one knew that something terrible was approaching. Zaydan's footsteps turned down the hallway leading to Amara's wing. Farid reacted instantly. His shoulders squared, and his expression sharpened. He pressed a hand against the door, feeling the vibrations of approaching guards. Lyra rose from her chair, clutching the pouch with trembling fingers. Amara backed away automatically, her instincts screaming for escape. But there was nowhere to run, no corner of the palace that could save her now. Zaydan entered with force, pushing the door open wide enough for guards to follow. His eyes, once filled with admiration for Amara, now carried a cold fury. He surveyed the room, the frightened bride, the defensive brother, and the tense friend as if seeing them clearly for the first time. His silence felt like a punishment, as though he wanted them to feel the weight of his rage before he unleashed it. Farid stepped forward immediately, placing himself between Amara and Zaydan. The guards responded by tightening their formation, prepared for violence. Farid's protective instinct was strong enough to override fear, and his stance clearly warned them that he would fight if he had to. Lyra moved toward Amara, pulling her closer while keeping her eyes on the Sheikh. The room grew smaller as tension thickened. The golden decorations, the polished floors, and the expensive drapes all became meaningless spectators to the unfolding chaos. Zaydan raised the report he had received from Tariq, shaking it slightly as if to remind them of the truth he had uncovered. The air around them felt heavy, charged, and ready to explode. The first movement came from Farid. When a guard stepped too close to Amara, Farid lunged toward him with desperate force. The guards responded instantly, and the room burst into chaos. Bodies collided, furniture crashed to the floor, and sharp sounds echoed off the walls. Amara screamed silently, frozen in place, as her world shattered again. Lyra tried to pull her toward the balcony, hoping to get her out of the room. But the guards blocked the path. In the middle of the struggle, Lyra opened her pouch. The small flash drive inside reflected the room's chandelier, catching Zaydan's attention. He recognized it as something important. Lyra held it tightly, knowing it contained the truth behind everything: the captivity, the deaths in Malaysia, and the desperate escape that changed all their lives. The sight of the flash drive enraged Zaydan further. To him, it represented hidden truths that he had not been allowed to know. His pride was wounded, and he wanted to reclaim control. He reached for it, but Farid intercepted him again, using every ounce of strength he had. The clash turned the room into a battlefield. Amara dropped to her knees, overwhelmed by the storm around her. Fear, grief, and guilt weighed down on her. She realized the past she tried to bury was now destroying everything around her. She had brought her nightmares into the Sheikh's palace, and now the consequences were unfolding in front of her eyes. The struggle grew more violent. A vase shattered against the wall. Guards fell and rose again, and the room filled with the harsh sounds of bodies fighting and breathless panic. Lyra was pushed to the ground, but she crawled to Amara, pulling her close as though shielding her. With her own body, the night that was supposed to begin a new life had instead become a scene of destruction. And with each passing moment, the violence escalated. guiding them toward an ending none of them could stop, an ending that would stain the palace forever. Blood pooled on the marble floor as the fight reached its breaking point. The palace guards, stronger and trained, eventually overpowered Farid, pinning him down with brutal force. His breaths came out sharp and painful, but his eyes stayed fixed on Amara, silently reminding her of why they had run in the first place. Lyra struggled nearby, still trying to protect the small flash drive that held the truth of their past. The room smelled of sweat, fear, and the metallic sting of blood. Everything felt surreal, like the walls themselves were watching a tragedy unfold. Zaydan stepped forward slowly, his anger evolving into something colder and more calculated. He believed he had been deceived, humiliated, and manipulated by people he allowed into his palace. The lavish wedding, the $3 million dowry, and the public attention that came with it replayed in his mind. Each memory fueled the belief that he needed to regain control, no matter the cost. His gaze moved from Amara to the pouch Lyra, still gripped tightly. Whatever was inside it, he wanted it, because answers were the only thing that could calm the storm he felt inside. When a guard yanked the pouch from Lyra's hands, she let out a silent gasp, falling backward. The flash drive slid across the floor, stopping at Zaydan's feet. He bent down, picked it up, and rolled it between his fingers as though it were a piece of evidence in a crime scene. Amara watched with trembling hands, knowing exactly what he was holding. Every memory she had forced into silence now felt alive again, pounding inside her head like a drum. That flash drive contained recordings, photographs, and documents of the horrors she had endured in Malaysia. She had been targeted by a trafficking ring that captured young girls from rural communities. The two men who died were part of that ring. Farid and Lyra had rescued her after discovering what happened, and the struggle during that escape led to bloodshed. The drive held proof of the crimes committed against her and the men's corruption. It was their shield evidence that Amara was not running from guilt but from danger. Zaydan didn't know this. He only saw it as hidden information kept from him. The guards pulled Farid to his knees, forcing his head down. Lyra crawled to Amara, both of them shaking as the sheikh examined the drive. When he demanded to know what it contained, no one spoke. Their silence enraged him further. His pride had already been shattered. Now he felt mocked. He signaled the guards, and violence erupted again. Farid, weak from the earlier fight, struggled helplessly. Lyra attempted to shield Amara, but a guard pushed her aside with brutal force. Amara felt the world spinning, her breath tightening as everything she feared was happening again: men, strength, power, and helplessness. The palace was no longer a symbol of wealth. It was another prison. In the chaos, something unexpected happened. A guard slipped during the struggle, crashing into a glass table. The sharp crack echoed loudly, startling everyone. Amara used that single moment of distraction to grab Lyra and pull her toward the balcony. Fear fueled her movements. She didn't think, she simply reacted, desperate to escape the violence unfolding behind her. But the balcony door was locked from the outside. Their escape ended in seconds. Zaydan turned toward them, the flash drive still in his hand, and the final confrontation began. The guards advanced, and Farid shouted through clenched teeth, begging them without words to stop. But nothing slowed the storm. The moment the guards reached Amara and Lyra, the struggle turned deadly. A misplaced blow, a sudden fall, and the sound of a skull hitting marble ended Lyra's life instantly. Her body collapsed beside Amara. Amara froze in horror, her screams swallowed by the vast room. Farid broke free long enough to reach her, but he was struck down before he could protect her completely. The violence spread like wildfire, uncontrollable and fueled by rage and fear. The palace floor, once polished and beautiful, became stained with the lives that had traveled so far to escape darkness. When the chaos finally stopped, the room was silent. Motionless bodies lay scattered. Only Zaydan and a few guards remained standing. The flash drive, now smeared with fingerprints and blood, rested in the sheik's trembling hand. The truth inside it would later reveal everything: the crimes, the suffering, the reason Amara had arrived in Dubai carrying invisible scars. But by the time the truth came to light, it was too late. The palace had already witnessed a night of destruction. The wedding that was meant to symbolize unity ended in a catastrophic bloodbath. And in the center of it all was a bride who had spent her life trying to escape violence, only to find that it had followed her across countries, across borders, and into the very room where her new life was supposed to begin.